Vanakkam. Hello friends. In the past few episodes, we have been seeing how the Pontic-Caspian region around the Caucasus Mountains has been identified as the birthplace of the Proto-Indo-European language family, and how the steppe pastoralists from these regions migrated towards the west and the east crossing the Ural Mountains, going into Russia. They founded the Sintashta culture dated to around 2500 BCE, which eventually gave rise to the Petronova and the Andronova cultures that spread all across Asia. And here we come to a very important contact zone where the Petronova people came into the Zervashan Valley, which is around today's Tajikistan, and made contact with the citadels of the BMAC, the Bactria Margiana archaeological complex that comprises of today's northern Afghanistan with southwestern Turkmenistan, was a very mature culture on the banks of the river Oxus, contemporaneous with the mature Harappan civilization peaking between 2200 and 1700 BCE. Large walled circular fortresses held within their precincts, palaces and temples with mother goddesses, residential quarters and workshops. They had active trade relations going on with the neighboring kingdoms of Sumeria and Egypt, and in the east with China, to the down south with the Harappan civilization itself. They invented the lost wax process and hollow mold casting methods, which were borrowed by neighboring civilizations. Remember the Harappan dancing girl cast with the lost wax process, which the Harappans borrowed from the BMAC and continue to this day here in our own Swami Malay to make divine idols. Now, the BMAC itself was excavated as late as in the 1970s by the noted Russian archaeologist Viktor I. Saryanidi, and this discovery helped fill many crucial gaps in mapping the shift of the Indo-Aryan speaking population from the Zervashan Valley into the subcontinent itself. The BMAC also had trade connect with the Sintashta Petrovka culture. And how do we know this? The seals of the BMAC and artifacts are found in all the regions with which they had trade connects. The remains of a chariot with two horses with cheek plates of precisely the same type as the Sintashta culture were excavated in the BMAC regions, proving that an early wave of incoming Indo-Aryans had settled along the periphery of the BMAC as early as 1900 BCE. During the initial contact with the BMAC, both rituals and vocabulary were borrowed, and the influence was mutual. How do we know that? In the BMAC necropolis of Gonnor was excavated horse burials where the horses had been sacrificed and the limbs cut off and rituals performed exactly as described in the Rig Veda. The Old Indic language of the Rig Veda contains many traces of its syncretic origin. That the language and the rituals itself developed in this contact zone of Central Asia is opined by Asko Parpola in his groundbreaking work, The Roots of Hinduism. Parpola himself, a very renowned Sanskrit scholar, in the year 1969 he got his PhD in the Drahyayana Srauta Sutra, following which he came to Kerala and lived for a few years, learning the Samaveda from a Nambudiri, at which time he documented the lives of the Jaimaniya Samavedans, and he says, and I quote, "Vedic rituals and recitations by Brahmins survived for over 3 millennia better in South India than in the North, which was long dominated by Muslim rule." It is his interest in analyzing the foundation of Hinduism that turned his attention towards the Indus Valley and eventually led to him gaining a very deep knowledge of the Tamil language as well. Parpola, in fact, identifies verses in the Rig Veda that describe the destruction of the fortresses belonging to the Dasyus or the Dasas, the fortresses that are circular in shape and in concentric circles, he identifies them with the 10 feet wide fortified walls of the BMAC itself. Also, a very important element of the rituals of the Rig Veda, the soma, the drug, was borrowed from the BMAC culture. Soma, coming from sau, a verb which means to press out, is identified with the genus ephedrine in these regions of Afghanistan, a medicinal plant which was the source of the drug ephedra banned among modern sports persons, thus fit to enhance the martial prowess of god Indra. Indra, a very important deity in the Rig Veda, 250 hymns, or around a fourth of the Rig Veda, are dedicated to him. His rise to prominence itself was very peculiar, cites Parpola, and the etymology of the word Indra itself, according to him, comes from a thunder god of the Finno-Uralic named Inmar. Many of the qualities of the Indo-Iranian war god Veeratragna were transferred on to Indra, and Indra was considered as a minor demon in the Avestan religion, where the drug soma became homa. In terms of vocabulary, the Indo-Iranian language had a lot of non-Proto-Indo-European loan words, and these are believed to have come from the early migrations that happened in the BMAC region from the BMAC language itself, which had no written script. And during subsequent migrations into the citadels of the BMAC, where the incoming Indo-Aryans mixed with the ruling elite, more words entered the Indo-Aryan, and this is proven by a deep research done by the great Russian linguist Alexander Sasha Lubotsky, who studied both Proto-Indo-Iranian and Vedic Sanskrit and published in the year 2001 the Indo-Aryan Inherited Lexicon, wherein he shows 383 non-Indo-European words in the Old Indic of the Rig Veda, meaning words lacking clear cognates in Indo-Iranian, the mother language. A third of these loan words are traced to the BMAC. Next comes another very important contact zone from a culture known as the Tepe Hizar 3C culture in an area known as Gorgan, a culture near the southeastern shores of the Caspian Sea in northern Iran, where the noted French archaeologist Roman Grishman, who specialized in ancient Persian, traces with the help of a very important archaeological marker, pottery. We saw in a previous episode while exploring the connect of the Harappan civilization with the Dravidian civilization, how ceramics or pottery that remained buried in the earth without disintegrating for hundreds and thousands of years are used by archaeologists to mark specific cultures. In the Pontic Caspian region, the pottery was blackish to grey in color, and the incoming Indo-Iranians adopted this kind of pottery. Girishman proposes that between 1800 and 1900 BCE, Indo-Aryan speaking chariot riding noblemen of the Tepe Hizar 3C culture with the same greyware pottery moved to neighboring North Syria from northern Iran, mixed with and eventually replaced the ruling elite, and founded the Mitanni dynasty by the 16th century. This North Syrian kingdom, though its rule lasted only 2 centuries, became a great power in West Asia, rivaling the Hittites of the Anatolian, that is today's Turkey, and Egyptian empires. While the population spoke Aryan, which itself was a branch of Proto-Anatolian, the Indo-Aryan speaking rulers seem to have quickly adapted to the local cultures and the language, and they communicated with all their neighboring kingdoms in the Akkadian language, which was recorded in cuneiform tablets by local scribes. Here, I would like to highlight a point made by the anthropologist Jane Hill, who points out that people who live in a settled atmosphere that gives them everything that they need, and hence who do not have the need to migrate elsewhere, are generally single language users. A classic example could be the Tamil people themselves, as opposed to those who live in regions of uncertainty, who have to migrate and are hence dependent on 2 or more groups of people. these people pick up linguistic skills very rapidly and integrate them and learn two or more languages. So, this is what happened in the Mitanni area. Again, the reason for migration itself is not necessarily a push factor like population growth, points out Jane Hill, besides other factors like deteriorating climatic conditions or diseases or famine. There could also be a pull factor where social calculation for more riches and power and status have inspired migrations since ages ago. So here the Indo-Aryans entered and then took over as rulers of the North Syrian Empire. The earliest written records of the Indo-Aryan are thus found here in the records of the Mitanni dynasty in cuneiform script using the Akkadian language. During their rule, from the first king to the last, all the Mitanni kings took an Indo-Aryan name during their coronation ceremony. Thus, Dasaratha I, Indo-Aryan Tvesharatha, meaning riding an attacking chariot, Ardhadama, Ritusumara, Kirtivasa, Satvara I, meaning a warrior or soldier, and Vasukani, in Indo-Aryan Vasukani, literally meaning the wealth mine, was the name of their capital city. Dasaratha I gave his daughter in marriage to an Egyptian king, and in the marriage document records the payment of a bride price known in Indo-Aryan as Vadura. It takes on the ni suffix, the ni suffix in Aryan, and has been recorded as Vadurani, the earliest record of the dowry system. Then in 1388 BCE, the Mitanni king Kurtivasa, while signing an accord with the neighboring Hittite king, called upon the four important gods of Rigveda, Indra, Varuna, Mitra, and the Narsatyas to stand testimony for the pact itself. Mitra meaning attesting to a pact of friendship, the meaning in which we know the word today, and Varuna probably meant Vak or true speech besides Rita or cosmic order, and coming to the Narsatyas denoting the Ashwin twins who were great horse riders, coming from the PIE root word nest, which meant home, from which comes the English nest, and Narsati means safe return home. And here Parpola relates this to the noun Nestor of a character found in the Iliad, a master charioteer who drives home the hero after a victorious battle. The charioteer enjoyed equal status with the ruler, and here Parpola draws a parallel with the concept in the Mahabharata, where King Salya drove the chariot of Karna and Lord Krishna drove the chariot of Arjuna. Masters of Chariot Warfare, another interesting document excavated in the year 1906 and 1907 in a region of Turkey, a document in the Hittite language, is an horse training manual which has a number of Indo-Aryan terms, especially for numbers, Eka for 1, 3 for 3, Sapta for 8, Nava for 9, besides the names of colors of the horses such as Babru for brown, which takes the suffix nu and becomes Babrunu in Hittite, and Pingala, which is brownish red, again takes on the suffix nu and becomes Pinkanu in Hittite. Ratha for chariot in Indo-Aryan takes the ni suffix and becomes Aradhyani, and Asva, the term for horse, takes the ni suffix and becomes Aswani. There are plenty of terms of Indo-Aryan origin in this horse training manual, and chariot warfare became integral to all West Asian armies including Egypt. That the impetus came from the Mitanni dynasty is attested by the fact that the associated term of Indo-Aryan origin finds a presence across all the languages of West Asia. Maria, that is used to denote a soldier, in Egypt becomes Mariana, in Hittite take on the suffix ni and becomes Marianini, while in the Avestan Iranian it is used as a purgatory term meaning rascal or one who is a mortal and who is opposed to the ideals of the Zoroastrian religion, leading to the word Maria, Margaya, the meaning by which we know it today in Hindi. This term in all these languages denoting a nobleman of very high status, very close to the ruler. This concept of dual kingship manifests itself later in the integral connect between the political power, the Kshatriya, and that of the sacred power of the royal chief priest, the Prohita, an ideology that came with the Indo Aryans into the South Indian country a whole millennium later. A fundamental tripartite division, or rather social hierarchy, warrior, the Kshatriya, associated with the color red, who alternated between a protector and a murderer, the mythical heroes like Hercules, Thor, and Indra all having killed their own fathers, that of the priest, the Prohit, associated with the color white, who was the intellect, the strategist, an example could be Chanakya, and the herder, the lowest rung or lowest category of the society, denoted by the colors black or blue. A variety of legal and ritual distinctions seem to have applied with these three categories of people in society, the roots of the Varna system. And then there was a fourth category, that of a poet. A highly respected social category, spoken words were considered to be tremendously powerful. A poet's praise was the only hope for a mortal to attain immortality, and we know them as rishi, a Vedic term that is used to denote an accomplished and enlightened person who, after intense contemplation, realized the supreme truth, captures it in hymns for posterity. Eventually, starting 2200 BCE, all the civilizations across the West, Central, and South Asia, such as the BMAC, the Indus Valley Civilization, the Egyptian, Mesopotamian, and Chinese civilizations, started declining, and this has been put down to a great period of drought. Today, the International Commission on Stratigraphy has even given it a term, the Megalayan, in which we still exist today, the period of drought which made monsoon rivers go dry and hence the courses of these rivers becoming uninhabitable. Major shifts were seen, such as, for example, the BMAC civilization itself shifted entirely into the Harappan region together with their seals, their artifacts, and burial practices. Copper hoards excavated in the Gangetic plain threw up a lot of weaponry which were of the BMAC origin. The signature graveware pottery of the Indo Aryans is traced back towards an eastern and southern migration into the declining Harappan sites through the upper Swat Valley in Pakistan, at which time a new culture arose, the Gandhara Grave culture. Dated to between 1400 and 1000 BCE, this was more of an extensive burial culture that spread over large geographical areas of the Swat Valley, carrying with it the black burnished greyware pottery with distinctive domesticated horse motifs recorded in these regions for the first time. And following this, what is more interesting is that in some of the graves here, there were also discovery of black and red ware pottery and burnished red pottery, which were signature styles of the declining Indus Valley civilization. So this is a region where the incoming Indo-Aryans mixed with the declining Harappan civilization and sowed the seeds of the foundation of Vedic culture. We will conclude in the next episode by looking at the genetic evidence that attests to the migratory journey of the Indo Aryans into India put forth by archaeology and linguistics. Vanakkam.